The Russian Federation has requested the floor to make a further statement. You have the floor, sir.
President, thank you so much. I'd like to make a number of substantive comments, but just as intro to again revisit the topic of what took place in Mariupol and the fact that the Security Council was not in a position to condemn this tragedy or to speak to this tragedy. And a number of my colleagues referred to this, including the Ukrainian colleague, and even based on his usual standards, he really has misphrased the position of the Russian Federation. We always condemn all attacks against civilians, all attacks against all civilians, and we mourn all civilians. And this is quite different from Kiev, where they state that they're mourning for civilians, but clearly state who and in what regions they are mourning for people. It's the fact that hundreds of individuals who are dying from Ukrainian rockets and Ukrainian snipers doesn't interest them. They continue to view Donbass as Ukrainian territory. If you don't consider it to be Ukrainian territory anymore, then just state it clearly. This will simplify things. Again, we always condemn the death of innocent people, and we stood ready to do so for Mariupol as well. And the fact that we weren't able to do this was the result of the diplomacy of a number of our colleagues, methods that they resorted to in the past when they come up with wording which quite clearly will be unacceptable to one of the members of the Security Council. Have you ever condemned these inhuman statements which we hear from Kiev? Why is it that you all fixate on the statements of one of the leaders of the self-defense formations and immediately we have to condemn them? It's quite clear that we're not acting fairly here, because the condemnation of what happened in Mariupol would have been adopted in just a few minutes, just as we adopted the condemnation of what takes place in Volnovakha, something we agreed to. We have always been in favor of objective investigation of such cases. In this case, of course, one doesn't want to bring to the Security Council the work of the OSCE monitoring mission, but it seems to us that in this case, the members of the monitoring mission did not act in the right way. Now, the mission with American members, US members of the mission, just in a very cursory way looked at the site of the tragedy and then immediately came up with a statement. This runs counter to the traditional, to the agreed methods of work at the OSCE. So again here, we see a case where tragic events have clearly been utilized for political means. Let me now move on to a more substantive part of our discussion. Now, quite regrettably, our meeting here today reminds us of a great many previous meetings. Even though perhaps the focus is a little different than before, but a great many colleagues today focused on the statements made by the self-proclaimed Donetsk People's Republic. I will remind you that Donbass has for months now been shelled by Ukrainian rockets and artillery. So it is quite clear that we cannot expect such statements by the leaders of the Donetsk People's Republic. They have been attempting to counter, to have the rockets and the artillery of the Ukrainian forces moved back to a distance from which they could not threaten Donetsk and Lugansk. This is also the thrust of the Minsk agreements, and this underscores the importance of implementing them. We had so many figures here today, so many, but we need to look at the roots of the problem. What does one mean by the thesis that the conflict cannot be resolved by military means? This is something which we referred to at the Security Council during the early phase of the conflict. Ukrainian tanks cannot simply move into the Donbass. This was an objective of the Poroshenko plan, who demanded capitulation, in essence, of the self-defense formations. This is something unacceptable. This is something we have seen in the recent period, and which unfortunately is being pushed by some of the members of the Security Council. Some of the members of the Council today said that the insurgents and Russia need to do this and need to do that, and then, of course, we can start the political settlement. This is an entirely wrong approach. Serious political efforts need to be undertaken now, right now. Direct dialogue between Kyiv and the West needs to be set up. There is a need to put an end to this game of hide and seek with the constitution, which needs to be discussed at a pan-Ukrainian level. Today, Poroshenko stated that they have agreed their return to the Geneva format. I'm not familiar with the fact that Russia agreed to a change to this format, but as far as I know, we are very flexible in Russia when it comes to the format. We stand to work in any format which would have any chance of yielding genuine progress in favor of a settlement. But I do wish to underscore here that all discussions regarding a format, one or other format, must not serve as a pretext to move away from direct dialogue between Kiev and the representatives of the regions, first and foremost, the representatives of the eastern regions. Thank you, sir.